Clashes between Libya's UN-backed government and the Libyan National Army are intensifying. At least 2,800 civilians have fled fighting near the capital Tripoli. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Federica Mogherini, is calling for a truce between the rival factions. Forces under General Khalifa Haftar want to take over the capital. The government is accusing the rebels of attempting a coup and is vowing to meet them with force. At least 21 people have been killed and 90 injured.
I think the first message we need to pass united is the full implementation of the humanitarian truce to allow the civilians and the wounded to be evacuated from the city and to avoid any further military action and any further military escalation and the return to the political negotiations and the political track.
British Prime Minister Theresa May will head to Brussels on Wednesday to meet leaders of the other 27 EU member states. She's hoping to convince the EU for a second delay to Britain's departure date. Britain is currently scheduled to leave the EU on Friday unless a further extension is agreed to. May said that when she goes to Brussels, she'll seek a short extension with June the 30th cited as a target date. If there's no agreement on the extension, the UK will have to leave the EU without a deal on Friday. American Airlines has extended its cancellation of 737 MAX flights until the 5th of June. This follows the grounding of this particular aircraft after 2 deadly crashes in 5 months. On the 24th of March, the airline said it would cut 90 flights a day until April 24th. The move by the biggest US airline is the latest sign showing that the Boeing model is not expected to resume service anytime soon. Boeing has also announced plans to reduce its monthly 737 aircraft production by about 20%. Now, Zimbabwe is facing a crisis as its fragile currency loses value at an alarming rate. The real-time gross settlement, RTGS, currency has shed more than 20% of its value since its launch, and even the country's own president has called it fake money. Concern is rising along with prices. Local and foreign businesses are closing down, and people live in fear that their savings will be wiped out once again. Is there any chance of the Zimbabwean economy bouncing back, and what went wrong with the new currency? Joining me in the studio is Machaka attorneys, human rights lawyer Nkobizita Mlililo. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So it's a crisis that just seems to be getting a whole lot worse. Talk us through what the Zimbabwean president's message was when he is laughing at the new currency. I mean, I should imagine that was pretty unnerving.
Look, Zimbabwe is being run by a clueless bunch, people who are politically insolvent. They have no solution to the future of the Zimbabwean people. The crisis in Zimbabwe has its roots in the nature of the political transition that happened in Zimbabwe from colonialism to the new so-called democratic state post the fall of the Ian Smith regime. It then shows signs with the agitation in the trade union movement leading to the formation of the MDC in 1999 and 2000. Now, this problem becomes so manifest in all the stolen elections from 2000 to date. The 2008 election created the signs that they were so manifest that there's a problem in the legitimacy of the political system and those who claim to govern the people of Zimbabwe. Then this problem is dramatized by the coup of November 2018, again indicative of the crisis of legitimacy in the political system. Then the question of legitimacy is put beyond doubt, with Nelson Chamisa winning the elections and those elections being stolen from him. So ZANU-PF has always played creative arithmetics with the election results. And unless the question of legitimacy is resolved, the economic problems that you see in Zimbabwe will continue. So the problem in Zimbabwe is not per se an economic issue. The economic issues are a manifestation of a deeper crisis of legitimacy in the political system. So resolve.
And the way it's going to stop if there is this crisis in the political system. I mean, even sanctions are blamed for the lack of progress as well, aren't they? I mean, what sort of role do they play?
There are no sanctions in Zimbabwe, and the debate around the issue of sanctions is a red herring, is an attempt to deflect from the real issue. The real issue in Zimbabwe is that you need to return the country to legitimacy, and the path to legitimacy is a dialogue which is real, which is meaningful, between those who represent the victory against colonialism and therefore the past, and those who represent the victory of the July 2018 election and the future. Those two forces need to have a real and meaningful dialogue, which is mediated by the African Union and SADC, which is guaranteed by the African Union and SADC, and conducted in an environment which is demilitarized, where the MDC is not criminalized, and mediated by a person who is respected across the African
But why
continent.
should that happen? If
It has to happen.
Zimbabwe's got this power, even though the country is crumbling. I mean, what's going to push all the players to the table? SADC's not going to do it.
No. Because if we continue on this path, Zimbabwe has all the necessary ingredients of a civil war. Because those who have been reeling under the dictatorship of ZANU-PF, at some point will radicalize. And once they have radicalized, they will come to a conclusion that the only route to freeing ourselves from this is to confront the state.
At what point is that? I mean, are you
I think we're very clear. We're very, very, very near. We're very, very near that, and therefore, which is why I'm saying, to resolve the economic issues in Zimbabwe, create the necessary conditions for a real and meaningful dialogue between those who represent the past and those who represent the future. Because if you don't do that, the young people that are in Zimbabwe who have been for instance, since 2000, now, you have a new wave of people who would have otherwise been employed, who have never seen a pay slip in their life. Sooner or later, those people are going to radicalize and realize that electoral politics, constitutionalized politics, it doesn't get them anyway. And therefore, you have to use other methods of interacting with the state. And which is why I'm saying that Zimbabwe has all the ingredients of a civil war and all the ingredients of young people being radicalized. And once that happens, both parties, ZANU-PF and the MDC, might very well lose control of what is happening, and it will be too late for SADC and the African Union to come into Zimbabwe simply because dead bodies are there.
I mean, tell us what sort of time frame we're looking at, and talk us through what people are facing on a daily basis. Price of all basics have shot through the roof.
Yeah.
How bad is it?
Well, your introduction was correct. There's this fake money that is called RTGS, which is not backed by anything. It's hot air, basically, which they're using for daily transactions. And even, by the way, even Mr. Mnangagwa himself acknowledges that it's not real money when he compares it with the US dollar. So increasingly, people's lives are getting difficult. Now, of late now, we have begun to see shortages of fuel, because fuel, by its very nature, is bought in foreign currency. It can either be tagged in United States dollars. So if the country is unable to perform internally, unable to attract foreign direct investments, unable to interact with the rest of the world as a meaningful member of the international community in terms of exports, so that you can get foreign currency to be able to buy, for instance, the basic fuel, people's lives increasingly become difficult. You spend so much time queuing for fuel, which is something that is basic, not only in terms of basic human conduct, but something which is basic in terms of running an economy.
So it's time to embrace the dollar fully again? Is that?
Yes, it is necessary that either you abandon any pretenses of currency that is called the RTGS, and either take the United States dollar as the currency of the country, or join the Rand Monetary Union, because it makes sense. The biggest trading partner of Zimbabwe is South Africa. South Africa is one big supermarket for Zimbabweans, so it makes sense that way. But because the country is being run by a clueless bunch, a bunch that is still fighting a war that ended 40 years ago, we are going to be stuck in liberation politics, which has no currency for the future. Liberation politics is as important as it is necessary to be transferred to a new generation, which new generations must take over the ideals of the struggle for national liberation, which were essentially to create a condition where Zimbabweans would live peacefully. This is not what the war was about. The war was not about the army being on the streets. The war was not about a muzzled right to freedom of expression. The war was not about a muzzle of the right to freedom of thought and political choice. That is not what this war was about. So ZANU-PF represents an exhausted form of nationalism which has no future.
Let's leave it there, Mr. Mlilo. Thank you very much for talking us through what's happening there.
Thank you very much.
Sport news coming up next, and then as we come down to Election Day, which party has caught your attention? Who's run the most effective elections campaign?